Good evening, everybody out there on YouTube. Once again, this is the Reverend. Happy Friday to all of you. You're probably going to be seeing this Friday morning. I just got back from watching Captain America 3 Civil War. And to say the least, it's a damn good movie. It's a really good movie. I don't want to beat a dead horse, and I find it really ironic that I was wearing this going into a Marvel movie. To tell you the truth, I wasn't planning on going to see the movie tonight. I just wore this while I was leaving the house, and my buddy Versus went ahead and he called me up. He's like, hey, we're talking about doing this maybe on Thursday or Friday. What about it? And lo and behold, a few tickets, being bought later, I was there watching it at the 8 o'clock showing tonight. And yeah, it's a good movie. In order to be able to go ahead and actually appreciate Captain America 3 Civil War for what it is, you have to realize the amount of investment in both time and story and characters. Those three things, time, story, and characters, that was put together so that the movie could actually work. Unlike certain other movies that have been released out over the last few months that showcased heroes fighting each other or having a disagreement, everything that was handled within the movie was very solid, and the reasons were very relevant, and they were also very logical. The conflict, as it builds, centers around Collateral Damage, very similar to another movie that we know has been released out just recently. And basically what we have is that the Avengers are pretty much at the center of another incident that, although they saved a large number of people overall, it turns out that there was also a lot of collateral damage and a lot of people died who weren't even involved in the incident. They go back and they revisit the events in New York, in Washington, D.C., also in Sokovia, and then the incident that happens in Lagos, Nigeria, where it involves actually Wakandan citizens, which brings in T'Chaka and T'Challa as far as the involvement of the Black Panther. And that's their way of introducing him into the universe. The reasons that they have everybody falling on one side or another as far as the Sokovia Accords, which requires the heroes not just to be it's not quite so much the Superhero Registration Act that they had out in the comics. Let's set this up right here. The Civil War comic book storyline could not be done on the same scale as they did in the comics for their use in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There are just way too many pieces that are missing. The Fantastic Four and the X-Men and many other characters that were involved just couldn't be involved in this particular version of the Civil War. Their licenses are in the hands of other people. Thankfully, they were able to go ahead and actually get Spider-Man in to go ahead and have him involved in this particular movie, and his part is great. I will actually revisit that again a little bit later. But basically what you had was that you have this whole group of superheroes who are weighing the pros and cons of doing what they're doing. And they realize that what they do isn't without consequence. And it sounds very familiar to another trope for another movie that was released out just recently. But the way that they handle the actual split and divide between the characters is very, very solid, and it's very logical. The problem. Okay, let me just say this right now. The problem with Batman versus Superman overall can be summed up in the fact that Batman was pretty much a paranoid bully, and Superman was, a superpowered emo hypocrite the whole time. Um, aside from the fact that their names were Batman and Superman, there really wasn't a lot of weight and a lot of reason invested. There wasn't anything, there wasn't anything there that kind of drew you in to invest your emotions or get attached to either one of these characters. Unfortunately, because of the nature of the story and everything else, a lot of the interest, as far as I'll speak for myself personally, a lot of the interest that I had with a lot of characters that were involved with Batman versus Superman was mostly from a point of curiosity. How are they going to handle XYZ character? How are they going to handle Batman? How are they going to handle Superman? How are they going to handle Wonder Woman? And how are they going to handle the other characters that showed up? The grand thing about Captain America 3 Civil War is that even though it is cast and it's handled very much like an ensemble piece with very many characters, very many varied characters that are well established, in the end, it very much turns out to be a Captain America movie. It turns out to be a dedicated Captain America story. The thing about it is that if you remove Captain America from the story that was handled for this particular movie, the story wouldn't work. It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't hold the same emotional weight that it does, that it presents to the audience. And it's amazing how they sit there and they juggle that many characters and give them all enough screen time to where not only does anybody not seem misserved, but they also seem relevant. And everything that they, the time that they have on screen is contributes overall to the story as it plays out. Now, I'm not going to spoil this, and I'm also trying really, really hard to keep my language PC so my buddy Versus can watch this video with his kids. But it's a great movie. Okay, let's go ahead and frame it this way: the good parts in the movie, without being too much of a fanboy and saying everything. The involvement of Spider-Man and Black Panther in this movie is awesome. The way that they introduce Black Panther to the universe and they show him off, it becomes very obvious that he's very formidable in the sense that this guy can go toe-to-toe with Captain America. He can go toe-to-toe with the Winter Soldier. He's got the tech and he's got the skills behind it to be able to go out of his way and stand alongside anybody in the Avengers and not look out of place. Spider-Man showing up. For the amount of time that they gave him, his presence was felt very impactful. And it wasn't just the parts when he was in the suit. It was also parts where they showed Peter Parker. Tom Holland did a great job playing Peter Parker and showing basically what makes this kid tick. Why is he doing what he's doing? Granted, we don't get the origin story, and thank God we don't, because everybody knows it. And like I said with another movie, we've already seen at least half a dozen different versions of his origin. We don't need another one. Peter Parker ends up being the nerdy, out-of-place kid who's trying to find where he fits in the whole superhero universe. Him meeting up with Tony Stark is actually a great moment, and the way that they handle their interaction is really, really cool. All of the action scenes were very well handled, and the way that all the fights happened was very creatively choreographed, and it made sense, especially with those involved. I didn't know what to think about. Well, okay, before I get to Baron Zemo, Ant-Man. Awesome. The biggest presence in the movie for when he's on screen. by far, and that is talking literally. I hope that's not too much of a spoiler, but I think some toys have already taken care of that. Let's step away from the heroes. The villain, the main villain in this is Baron Zemo. And if you sit there and you look through his character and how everything is set up, he's not a superpowered guy. But what he is that he's a guy with a purpose, with time on his hands, and the intelligence to go out of his way to set things in motion that cause the events to unfold. He knows that he can't, well, he's conscious of certain limitations of his, and because of that, it causes him to enact his plan, which works out great. None of it is hard to understand. None of it is, convoluted in logic, and it makes sense. Now, granted, I am going to say that you're going to have to have seen the previous Marvel movies, and I mean the previous Marvel movies going all the way back to Iron Man 1. Well, not all of them, but if you followed the Marvel Cinematic Universe going all the way back to the first Iron Man, there are things that are addressed in this movie that, because you're familiar with the backstory of all the characters, it makes a lot of the events, especially the ones toward the very end, very, very impactful. They carry a lot of weight. I'll continue on that thought a little bit later. Now, the bad. I'm going to be very honest. I'm having a real hard time finding, the bad. The reason being is that I really enjoyed this movie. I guess you could sit there and say that maybe some of the one-liners were out of place, but when you watch the movie, they don't seem out of place. Neither do they seem out of character. Neither does it seem forced. It's one of those things where you have a set of personalities that obviously go out of their way and they take risks. They go out of their way to do things a certain way. And because of that, the way that they interact with each other and everything else, it belies a certain familiarity that doesn't come from people who have just barely met. When you go ahead and you get to this point in the movie, when the movie starts, the Avengers, as they are, as a team, have been together for an extended period of time. They've been living together, they've been training together, they've been fighting together, they've been going on missions together, and it makes sense. It feels like everybody is familiar with each other, very much on a familiar level. They've got familiar bonds. That sounds like a lot more good stuff. I'm trying really hard to sit and talk about the bad. I guess if you're really nitpicking, you can come to the point where you can sit there and say, okay, I expected this particular outcome to happen. Of course, these characters are going to show up in other movies, which is the caveat and the weight, the obstacle that a lot of these movies have to sit there and be mindful of. It's also a burden that all of the movies, for as far as the MCU movies going forward into Infinity War, has to be mindful of. Yeah, they have to be able to create a sense of tension and create a tangible stakes that makes you believe that our heroes are putting things at risk. Where it really works is that, like I said, none of the points of logic, the reasoning behind everything, it happens very organically. Granted, a lot of the heavy lifting and setup for the storyline has been done over the previous movies that have been in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And as I stated before, if you've seen the movies that are coming up to this point, it makes sense. Everything that happens at this point in time and the way that it resolves makes a lot of sense. I really wish I could spoil this, but I've got 3 buddies who, you know, are probably going to be pissed at me once they see this video go up. But I will say right now, I highly recommend the movie. I would have to see it again to be able to break some of the details down more, where I'd be able to dig deeper. But as somebody who just saw the movie and walked out of the theater, you know, an hour and a half ago, or excuse me, less than an hour ago, it is a great movie. It does what it's supposed to do. And like I said, the magic of it is that even though it has all these characters to go ahead and juggle, the Russo brothers, they put together the story in a way where at the end, it's obvious that it's a Captain America movie. Without him being in that role, this movie would not be the movie that it is. If you remove him from the movie, this story doesn't happen at all. And that's just the truth of the matter. Now, this puts us at an interesting spot, because at the end of this month, we have XMen Apocalypse. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to handle this particular movie and the juggernaut that it's going to be, or if they're going to sit there and knock it out of the running. I'm pretty sure that XMen Apocalypse, after 3 weeks of this being in the box office, XMen Apocalypse is probably going to end up taking #1 the weekend that it opens. Is it going to make as much money as Captain America 3 Civil War? I'm not sure. But because of the reception that this movie has, not just critically, but also from the energy that it felt from the people in the theater, this is one that people will be happy to go back and see. They're going to be willing to go back and see this multiple times. Heck, like I said, there are 3 dudes that I'm going to be going to see this with probably on Sunday who are going to be very angry at the fact that I'm putting this review up right now. That aside, we can go ahead and we can contrast this to the other obvious comparison, which is Batman versus Superman. And the funny thing about Batman versus Superman is that the thing that makes me sad about it is that it could have been a great movie. And it's not because there wasn't available stories around for them to go ahead and crib from and to adapt. No, there are a lot of available stories. It's just that, as I said in previous review videos, it just seems like every movie, everybody had something to say and contribute to the movie. But guess what? Nobody was willing to say no at all to any of the ideas or any of the plot points or any of the objects or any of the things that they wanted to go ahead and shove in. This particular movie, it runs 2 hours and 26 minutes. It is very, very tight in script. And the biggest downfall of Batman versus Superman, which also seems to be the biggest strength on Captain America 3 Civil War, is that the script was not up to par. There was just way too many loose ends. And the things that were connected together were connected by details that were paper thin and very convoluted. Or even worse, details that weren't even shown on screen. With Captain America Civil War, the details are there. They show you what's going on. They don't tell you. They don't spell it out. But the way that it's handled is the only way that you can get to the point where certain scenes have the emotional weight that they carry is because they earned it over the last whole run of movies that they put out previously. I'm not going to give this a number out of 10 rating, because like I said, I'm going to have to see this again to be able to go ahead and nail it down. I'm leaning toward an 8.5, 9 out of 10. But I'll just say this, YouTube. If you're thinking about going to see the movie, go see it. If you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what they've done so far with all of their properties and characters, go see it. If you haven't seen any other Marvel movie before and you think that, well, maybe this might not be worth my time, well, I would suggest at least catching up with Phase 1 to go ahead and see what that's all about. Yeah, actually, to get the full weight out of it, you'll probably have to see all the other MCU movies. But if you're just looking for a good movie, especially a popcorn movie that, you know, a good sit-down summer movie, which this is what this is, pretty much launching the summer season for Hollywood, go see it. I cannot recommend this movie enough. I really want to go into spoilers, but I know people are going to be pissed off at me if I do. With that, thank you for spending the last few minutes with me, YouTube. If you're so kind, leave a comment below, hit like, hit subscribe. You know, you're probably going to see me again a little later on this week with the other middle-aged dudes. Again, I'm the Reverend. Hooray for Hollywood. Go see this movie. I highly recommend it. With that, good night.